Welcome back to another Construct video, where in our Pokemon game we're going to have the ability to switch Pokemon. And if we decide we're not happy with the Pokemon that we've got, we can have a go at trying to catch a new one and add it to our party. Let's get started with the video. So we're going to start off with some small changes. First of all, I've got all my object types here. I'm going to put these in a folder. Now this is something we didn't do before because this series was very much aimed at people who didn't have a premium version, but we're now past the stage of 40 events. So we're going to add some folders now just to clear up our code. So I'm going to add a battle folder. I'm then going to just click on all my battle assets. So I'm just going to scroll down, holding shift to select all of those, and I'm just going to move them to this folder, and I can hide that away. I'm going to create a second folder called Worlds, and I'm just going to find all the world stuff. So I'm going to start by shift clicking everything, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to unselect my arrays, unselect the mouse, and unselect the keyboard. Everything else can go in this world folder. And it just ties up my code a little bit so I can see my objects a little bit nicer. Next, I'm going to fit a bug that I found. So we're going to scroll into our code. This is our battle event. And I'm looking for this code that checks whose turn it is. So if it's the player's turn or the computer's turn. Now during this phase, we calculate what's called final damage. And currently this is producing a decimal number, which is not great because when we look at our Pokemon, which you've seen from the intro screen, we're going to end up with 14.789. It makes no sense. Let's have it as whole numbers. So we're just going to add round, open bracket, and then close bracket. And we'll do the same for the enemy as well. Even though we won't see the enemy's number, it reduces the size of numbers that we're having to store, but also means that the player is not going to survive on 0.01 health, which is going to be really frustrating. And if you look at the health bar, it will look empty. So nice little fix there. Now let's move into the big changes we need to make. So we're going to start by taking this layer here, and we're going to rename it Battle. We then need to add a new layer above, and this is what's going to hold our Pokemon that we can look at. So I'm going to insert a layer above, and I'm going to call it My Pokemon. I'm going to lock the battle layer and make sure I'm clicking on My Pokemon, so I'm working off that one there. Now for this, I'm going to reuse as many assets as I can get away with. So I'm going to start by going to Battle. I'm going to take this Battle dialog box and I'm going to clone it, and I'm just going to rename it My Pokemon BG for background. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to move it into object types so it's no longer in the battle folder. So I can then take this and I'm going to resize it. Now you can create your own window for this. Again, I'm going for quick and easy. So I'm going to move this down to about so, and this is where I'm going to put my Pokemon on inside my party. Next thing I need is also from the battle folder, and I'm going to take this battle Pokemon computer. This is just the sprite that we see of the computer. I'm going to clone this, and I'm going to rename it My Pokemon Icons. Now in the actual Pokemon game, I'm just going to move this out of that folder as well. In the actual Pokemon game, the sprites are different than the ones you see in battle. For simplicity, I'm going to reuse them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position 6 of these on the screen, fairly small, and this is going to be my icons that will show which Pokemon I've got where. So it's a bit of trial and error to get these positions. You can obviously use the X and Y to line them up a bit nicer on the properties bar. Again, I'm going to be really quick on this for the video's sake, and I'm going to say roughly that's about 6. Now they're not the most evenly spaced apart. I could adjust that slightly, but we'll leave it at that for now. We need 2 more things added for this. The next thing we need is the level. We want the level of the Pokemon to be on display. I think that's useful information. So my Pokemon level. We'll start all of these naming conventions with my Pokemon, so we know it has to do with this part here. I want to make sure this is not overlapping the other Pokemon. I'm actually going to reduce the font down to about 9. It doesn't need to be very big, and I quite like it on this background in a white font. I'm just going to grab a white like so. And I'm going to set this to what I would expect this text to show. And this just makes it a bit easier to view in the editor for me. So I'm going to do level and then 100. level 100 obviously being the biggest number that we can get from that value. I'm then going to copy and paste this for all 6 of the Bulbasaurs that we've got. And again, these Bulbasaurs are going to change their animations depending on which Pokemon we've got in our party. And if we haven't got a Pokemon in that slot, it's going to disappear completely. So roughly in position. And then finally, I'm going to take this My Pokemon level, clone it once more, and I'm going to rename it and My Pokemon HP. This is going to be their hit points. Again, something else that's really, really useful for us to see when selecting our next Pokemon. So now we've got that, we can change it, and I'm going to put HP, and I'm going to put 20 out of 20, because that's what I want it to look like in the final result. So once that's done, I can just position that for all of my Bulbasaurs again, like so. And last one. Now, when we haven't got a Pokemon in that slot, we're going to just make this text nothing. So we're just going to delete the text. So the text box is still there, but there's no text in there. We can't do that with our sprites. Now, we can make the sprites invisible, but that's just extra code we have to add. So we're going to use a bit of a trick. We're going to right-click and edit the animations. We're going to scroll to the bottom, and we're going to take this Deoxys and duplicate it. We're then going to take this marquee tool and just delete the Deoxys. So when we haven't got a Pokemon, it's going to show this frame instead, which is just nothing. And click OK. So nice little trick there. Final thing that we need sprite-wise for this is going to insert a new object, scroll down, and we're going to do My Pokemon button. And we're going to just take a red and fill it in. And then I'm just going to drop the opacity down to about 30%. Now you might have remembered this all the way back from episode 1, but we did this with these buttons here. These are the hitbox for these buttons. We're going to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to go over and I'm going to do a rough size for where I want the player to be able to click, and I think about there. And I'm just going to repeat this 6 times. So where is the hitbox for the player clicking on this particular Pokemon? Doesn't need to take up all the area space, so it doesn't matter that there's gaps in there. That's just where the player won't be able to click. And nothing will happen unless the player clicks, so they won't be able to move on. So if they misclick, they can just click again. So it's not the end of the world. So we've got our 6 Pokemon and our 6 buttons. Final thing we need to do is we need to add 2 instance variables to these buttons, so we can click on any of them, and we're just going to add a new instance variable. First one's going to be called slot number, and it's going to start at 0, and then let's add one more, and then we'll change the values, and then we're just going to say has Pokemon, and this is going to be a boolean, and this is going to check if there's a Pokemon in that slot. We'll set it to false for now, but it doesn't really matter. And this is really important because if there isn't a Pokemon, we can't click on that slot to change into that Pokemon. So we're only able to click onto slots that have a Pokemon in when changing Pokemon. So we're going to go through one at a time, so make sure we click off first, and we're going to click on each button and change the slot numbers. So slot number 0, slot number 1, slot number 2, and these are going to line up with the Pokemon we've got in our array, which we'll look at in just a second. So 3, 4, and 5. So let's go over to my Pokemon. I'm actually going to close building 1 and world 2 because we don't need them. And this is my Pokemon, so it's currently set to a Bulbasaur. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this code here, copy it, and put it into Pokemon 2. So I'm going to start with 2 Pokemon, be easier to visualize the differences there. This Pokemon I'm going to set to 130, which can be a Lapras. I'm just going to edit some of the values on here as well, just so I can get a bit of variety. So 30 is its HP out of 50. Attack, we'll leave it 1,000, why not? And let's give it some more speed, so it should be able to attack first. We'll put that at 60, and we'll keep the attacks the same. Only thing I'm going to change is XP. I'll put this down to 5. And finally, the most important thing is we need to change this middle value. So currently you see it's set to 0 all the way down. This means it belongs in slot 0, but we've already got a Pokemon in slot 0. So it's a bit of a tedious task, but what we need to do now is change this to 1. So that's done from that side. We can now go over to our battle events, and we're going to set up a little bit of code. So we're actually going to start by taking a lot of this code from the very, very start, this long bit of code, and reducing it down a little bit. It's going to make our lives a little bit easier. Let's start with moves. Moves is something that we set up really, really early on for our moves, but we don't need it anymore. So I'm just going to delete it. Next, we're going to take a lot of the code that has to do with us and put it into a function. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code here that says set the player's Pokemon to my Pokemon.current Pokemon. I'm going to take this line of code here, so I'm holding control now, to take the animation frame. I'm taking this one here that says set my attack, defense, speed, health, my health, and then finally I'm going to go down a little bit further and take my XP and my level. All of this I'm going to do Control X to cut, reducing this code down massively, and what I'm going to do is scroll right down to the bottom and I'm going to right click and add a new function. This is going to be called swap Pokemon. And anytime that I swap Pokemon, I want to run this set of functions. So why not have it in one place so I can call it multiple times instead of having to copy and paste all that code somewhere else and just make this project really, really big for the sake of it. Now, all my code's there, it's doing the same job, it's just not been called yet, so all I'm going to do is add a new action to start with layout, function, and I'm just going to call this swap Pokemon. Move this to the top, just about there, after the stop animations are done. So nice little fix there, and that's going to come in handy a little bit later. Before we do anything else, we're just going to add an action as well, and we're going to take our new layer that we've added and make it invisible to begin with. So set layer invisible, and we're taking layer 1. We also need to add a separate action with this layer, which is really important, and there's this new option that was added recently for an update called set layer interactive. And we're going to set layer 1 to not be interactive, which means we can't click on anything on layer 1. Now the code should stop this anyway, but I like this as a nice extra security that you can't accidentally click on stuff that's invisible and change Pokemon when you're supposed to be attacking. So I think it's a nice little needed feature. So now we can scroll down into our code and we can start looking at adding the ability to see our Pokemon and switch into them. So let's start with a new function. And this is going to be view my Pokemon. We want to show our Pokemon on the screen. So first thing we do when we call this function is we're going to do the opposite of what we've just done. We're going to go into our layers and we're going to set layer 1 to be visible, and most importantly we want to set it to be interactive so we can interact with this layer, making sure you're on layer 1. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to save the player's health at this stage. Now we don't need to write any new lines of code for this, we're just going to find the line of code that we've done for this already. There's a couple of examples of this at the moment, so if I just scroll through to see if we can find one, there'll be one when we run away, so this one here, so set value of 1 being current Pokemon's health, so I'm just going to copy and paste that, scroll down and put that here. So we're saving that back to the array before we call the whole array, and that way we get the correct information displayed on the screen. Next, I'm going to click on the left hand side, right click and add a blank sub event. Now if we double click on the sub event, we're going to add what's called a repeat. So all a repeat does is repeat stuff a set number of times. We want to repeat something 6 times. And obviously 6 times for these 6 Pokemon in our party. Now we're going to add a condition. We're going to add a few conditions, and it's all to do with this button that we set up. So first of all, we're going to compare instance variable of slot number and see if it equals the loop index. Now the loop index just means what iteration of the loop is it on, so it will start from 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. It's repeated 6 times, the loop ends. This allows us to go through each slot one at a time. We're then going to add another condition to this onto our button, and we're going to see if it's overlapping and scroll through it again until you see my Pokemon icons and hit done. We'll copy and paste this 2 more times. I'm going to do the same for our 2 text boxes. So my Pokemon's HP and my Pokemon's level. I use this technique quite a lot, and it means that it's only going to refer to the icons, the HP and the level that is overlapping the button, and it's only going to select the button which matches the loop index. What this essentially means for us is it's going to go through this one and only look at this icon, this level, and this HP. Next iteration of the loop's only going to look at these three, then these three, then these three, and so on. It's a really, really clever technique to only get certain text boxes and icons without having to create about 3 or 4 different objects. So now we've got that set up, we're not going to actually add an action here, we're going to add a new sub-event. So click on the left-hand side and add a new sub-event. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take my Pokemon and we're going to check the value at X and Y. Now the value we're going to check is we're going to check value 2. I'm going to take my Pokemon button dot slot number. So this is checking through our array at that certain value. Now the reason we're checking slot number 2 is we're checking if a value is empty or not. And because 0 is actually a value that can be true for the ID, that's what Bulbasaur is, this doesn't work as a way to check if there's a Pokemon there or not. So what I'm doing is I'm checking the max HP, and if it's equal to 0, it must not be a Pokemon. It must be an empty slot, because a Pokemon can't have 0 HP. So I'm using this as a sort of check to see, is there a Pokemon there, yes or no. So if there isn't a Pokemon, let's do a couple of things. First thing we need to do is we need to stop the animation for our icon so it doesn't go through all the different icons. Next, we're going to take the icon again, and we're going to set the animation frame. We're going to set it to 156, which is our blank animation frame. We're also going to take our HP, scroll down, and we're going to set the text, and we're going to set it to what it is at there, which is just blank. That's what those 2 strings mean. And we'll do the same for the level. We'll set text, and we'll make that blank as well. So that's all set up. Final thing we're going to do is we're going to take our button and we're just going to set the boolean of has Pokemon to false because there's no Pokemon there. We're then going to click on the left hand side and add what's called an else statement. Now to make our lives easier, we're just going to use shift click to copy and paste all of this into our else, so we don't need to click on all those objects again. And instead of setting the animation frame to 156, this time it's going to be my Pokemon dot at 0 is the ID or the frame that we need, and then comma, and then we're going to do my Pokemon button dot slot number to get the right value from our array. HP, this one gets a little bit more tricky, so we're going to write HP first and then a colon and add a space. We're then going to use the AND sign, and this just joins 2 strings together. So if you're combining strings and variables together, it's really, really useful. So we want to get my Pokemon dot at, and we want value 1, which is HP, and then again it's going to be my Pokemon button dot slot number. Then we're going to use the AND sign again, and inside the speech marks I'm going to put a space first, then a slash, and then a space. Use the AND sign once more, and then we can do my Pokemon dot at. This time number 2 is our max HP, and then finally my Pokemon button dot slot number, like so. Take your time on that bit of code. It's a bit more tricky, but it basically just shows our current HP and our max HP, adding HP at the start and a little slash. Make it a little bit more readable. As for the level, this one's a little bit more simple. I'm just going to write LV colon and space. That doesn't need to be there. Again, it's just helping the user out. And then my Pokemon dot at number 10, which is the array slot that has our level in. And then finally, my Pokemon button dot slot number. So this will now show our Pokemon stats. It's pulling it from array, and you can repeat this process to add more stats. So you could show the attack, defense, and speed stats if you want to as well. Again, this shows you the concept, so you can add that if you want to. Finally, it has a Pokemon, so we're going to change that to true. So now we've got a way to view our Pokemon, and this will pop up onto our screen. We now need a way to actually click and swap that Pokemon in battle. So what we need to do is we're going to do a couple of things now. So first thing we need to do is we need to actually go to the place where we call our Pokemon. So if you scroll back through your codes a little while ago, but you'll see that we've got it here where we show dialog, set text to Pokemon, wait for signal, enter, cool, show options. I'm going to reduce this down quite a bit, and we're going to shift click and get rid of all of this. And we're going to start by adding in our new function that we created, which is view my Pokemon. Now, when we view Pokemon, there's going to be two instances where we want to call this function. One is going to be for swapping Pokemon, and the second is going to be for catching Pokemon and deciding which slot it goes into. So because of this, we actually need to create a new variable that's going to track which mode are we on. Are we on swapping Pokemon or are we on catching Pokemon? So I'm just going to quickly go to my global variables, and I'm going to add a brand new one. And this is going to be called Pokemon swap state. And we'll start this state off at 0, and then we'll change it to either a 1 or 2, depending on if we're viewing or capturing. So we can go back to our Pokemon now, which is here, this line of code. And first thing we're going to do is add an action, and we're going to set the value of Pokemon swap state, and we'll put that at a 1. We're then going to move this just to the middle here. So it will show the dialog box, which ain't really needed, but it'll just get rid of the move options, which is quite nice. It's going to put the swap state to 1, and then it's going to allow us to view our Pokemon. We can then go to the bottom. I'm going to add new events. We're going to take our mouse, and we're just going to say if we've clicked an object, and the object is going to be our My Pokemon button. There we go. So we're checking if we're clicking on that button. Now there's a couple of other checks that we need to do with this button. So we're going to add another condition. And first of all, we're going to check if it has a Pokemon there. So are you clicking on a button that has a Pokemon? The second thing that we need to check is a system requirement, and we need to check what state are we on. So is the swap state set to 1? If so, we know we're dealing with swapping Pokemon. So first step is going to add an action, system, and we'll set the value of current Pokemon. And this is now going to equal the button we've just clicked on, so my Pokemon button dot slot number. Next, we're going to make use of that function called swap Pokemon. Really useful function that we use that just basically takes all of our Pokemon stats and swaps them with the current Pokemon, which we've just changed. Next, we're going to take a system, and we're going to scroll down. We need to get rid of those layers now. So we're going to set layer visible, layer 1, and make sure that's now invisible. And just for safety, we're going to make it not interactive anymore, so we can't click on it. So set layer interactive, layer 1, interactive off, and done. Finally, we need to make sure it is now the enemy's turn. Now to do this, we need to do a couple of things. We're going to go to system, set value, and we're going to take the value of move power. Now, at the end of each go, it calculates what power is being done by the player, and then it takes that away. Because we've not changed that value, because we've not done an attack, it's still set to the damage the enemy's done. So we're going to reset that back to 0. So when it does damage calculations at the end of the turn, it's going to times by 0, giving the result 0, so the enemy loses no health. Finally, we're going to add an action, scroll down, and we're going to signal continue. Now, continue is something that we use inside of checking whose turn it is, and you'll see if we look up into our code, it's just here. It waits for that signal, then it does the calculation, and then it toggles whose turn it is. So that just basically says our turn's over now. Thank you very much. So let's do a test on this. So make sure you're starting in the world. I'm going to hit play. So if I start by trying to get myself into a battle first, and we should be greeted with our normal battle screen that we're used to. And again, it will decide who goes first, so Psyduck's faster. And now if I go onto Pokemon, this will pop up, and I'm able to click onto a different Pokemon. So let's click on my Lapras. Lapras will now swap in, and you'll see that I keep my health from what my Lapras was at before. So if I go to Pokemon, 26 out of 50, Bulbasaur 16 out of 20. Now you can click on the same Pokemon you've got. This will still end your turn. So that's something just to be mindful of. That's something you could look at fixing, but we'll keep it really simple today. And every time I change, we watch my XP bar as well, my health bar, that will change as well. So So we've got a system now to swap our Pokemon in and out of the level. Now you notice that we've still got these buttons here, which are a little bit jarring, a little bit annoying. Really simple fix to that. We're just going to go back to the battle screen, click on my button, and we can just scroll down and initially visible off. So now they're invisible, so we don't see them in the game, but their hitboxes are still there. Next, we're going to move on to actually capturing Pokemon. And this is something that's been a bit of a challenge to implement, but works pretty well. So let's look at implementing this now. First thing that we need is we need a new function. And this is called try to catch. Because it's going to be chance based. We're not going to be able to catch all the time. We're going to try and catch Pokemon. So we're going to start by adding a blank sub-event. And on this sub-event, we're going to do system and compare two values. So we're going to use the round function once again to get a whole number. And then inside the brackets, we're going to do random. And I'm going to do random between 1 and 2. I'm going to check if that number equals 2. So again, it's basically flipping a coin of if we've caught the Pokemon. If you want to change this, however, you just change this number. So it's 1 and 4, and if that value is a 2, then you capture it. So I'm going to keep it between 1 and 2. Keep it really, really simple at this stage. Now, if we do capture the Pokemon, what we're going to do is we're going to take our system, set value, and we're going to take this Pokemon swap state and put that at 2. What we're also going to do is do a function, and we're going to do view my Pokemon. So it's going to show the Pokemon on screen, and it's going to set the swap state to 2. That's all we need to do at this stage. However, if we don't capture it, we're going to add an else, and we'll do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to start by going into battle, and we're going to take this dialog text that we've got. We're going to set the text and just give a bit of feedback to the user. The Pokemon broke free. Just like so, nice and simple. We're then going to add a short wait of just 1 second before we continue. Now this bit's going to be a little bit confusing because I've missed a step and I'm going to go back to it, but we're going to go into our settings and we're going to take our battle Pokemon computer and we're going to set the frame back to computer's Pokemon. We are going to change the Pokemon's frame in just a second, so this will make a bit more sense then. Finally, I'll turn it over, so just like before, we're going to start by setting the value of move power. Again, it's taking the old computer's move power at the end to calculate the damage. We're going to set it to 0, which means no matter what happens, it's always going to deal 0 damage to the computer because we haven't done anything. And then we're going to signal continue, which ends our turn. So I'm going to signal and then continue. And that's it for the try to catch system on working out if we've caught it or not. Obviously, if we have caught it, there's a lot more work that we need to do. So let's change a couple more things first. So first of all, we're going to scroll up and we're going to go to the option where we can choose to capture a Pokemon. Now currently this is done with the bag. Now because we don't have a bag, we're going to change this to you throw a Pokeball. Like so. So it's a slight change or a slight variation of the system we've got already. And instead of call show options, we're going to get rid of that function. And we're going to add a new function, which is called try to catch, which we've done already. Final thing we need to do is we want to make it look like we've thrown a Pokeball at it. And for this, we're going to do a bit of a cheaty method. We're going to go into our battle folder, find our computer's animations. I'm going to add a brand new animation for frame 156. I'm going to duplicate the Deoxys one, and I'm just going to remove it. Now what I've got already is I've just found a really simple Pokeball. I'm just going to copy and paste this in. I'm going to paste it, enlarge my canvas, and then I'm going to resize it. I'm going to start by resizing it the size I want it to be, so about 16 by 16, making sure it's set to stretch, and this makes it much smaller. I'm then going to resize it once more to 64 by 64, which is the same as what all the sprites are. But I'm just going to put a line to center. This means it will stay the same size and it will go to the center like so. So when I throw a Pokeball, I'm going to add an action that takes the player's animation and I'm going to set that frame to be 156. I'm then going to just put that there. So I throw a Pokeball, it's going to change to the Pokemon icon. I can then hit enter, it will then try and catch it, and it will either say broke free or the Pokemon's been caught. And if we test that, we can see that now. So I'm in the battle system now, and if I hit back, it will throw a Pokeball. You see the Pokeball icon, I can hit enter, and now it comes up with my Pokemon on my team, or it'll break free and it'll allow the player to attack next. Now what we want to do is make it that you can click any of these 6 slots. Now the way this system works, to try and keep it as simple as possible, is whatever slot you'll click on, it will completely override. So if there's no Pokemon there, it will override it and put our Pokemon there. If there is a Pokemon there, so if I click on Bulbasaur, it will get rid of my Bulbasaur and it will put the Pokemon that I've captured. This is a way to make it so it always works no matter what. We don't need to worry about dealing with the bag, your Pokemon's full and you can't add a new Pokemon, or dealing with adding a box system, and this just gets far more confusing. So this way you can always have up to 6 Pokemon and you just swap out the ones you want, just like you do with moves in a normal Pokemon game. So now that's set up, we can start adding it so we can click and swap our Pokemon. Before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go back to the battle system, and one thing you might want to do at this stage, I won't be doing, but you can actually go on to this object here, edit, and you can actually take out this bag option, fill it in with a nice white, so you can use the eyedrop to get the exact shade of white, and then use the eyedrop once more with a pencil, set to 1, and you can write your word catch. So if I just do it really quickly, this is going to look awful, but you can spend a bit more time on it. There we go, catch. So you've got your own menu icons as well. There we go. So the final thing we need to do, like I said, is add the click option in there. So we're going to scroll to the bottom, and we need to take a lot of the stuff that we've used already. So we're going to check if our mouse is clicking on our object, and that object is going to be my Pokemon button. We also need to check the swap state, so compare variable, and check Pokemon swap state is equal now to 2. So if all of that's done, and then finally we can add our actions to go with this. So first action is going to take our swap state, and we're just going to put it to 0. And this just means that you can't accidentally click on more than once and start giving yourself more Pokemon. So we'll set it to 0 straight away, and that just makes that inactive. Next, and this bit gets a little bit long, but it's not too bad. We're going to go to my Pokemon, and we're going to set X and Y. So for every single Y, it's going to be my Pokemon button, dots, and then slot number. The X and the value is going to change each time. So 0 is the ID, and for this one, it's going to be the computer's Pokemon. I'm going to copy and paste this line of code. Next one is going to be HP, and this is going to be computer's health. Copy and paste again. Now this is where it gets a little bit easier. What we did is we set up, so if we take the Pokemon sprite, we actually added a lot of variables to it, such as the max HP. We're then going to copy and paste this again. Value 3 would be the attack. So we're going to take attack there. Copy and paste again. We're going for defense, which is number 4. Next is going to be speed. And next we move on to the moves. Now the moves are a little bit more tricky because we're actually getting them straight from the Pokédex. So what we're going to do is call the Pokédex.at. The first one is in slot number 6, and then we're looking at the computer's Pokemon to look up that value of which Pokemon has that move. Because there's 4 moves, we're going to repeat this another 3 times, and we're going to do 7. Make sure you change it to 7 there. We're going to do 8, and again make sure you change it to 8 there, and then finally we'll do number 9 as well. And this is now copying all the moves into your Pokedex for you, or into your Pokemon themselves. Final thing we need is the level, so that's number 10, and this one we've actually got the computer's level as a variable. Also need number 11, which is the XP. Nice and simple. You start with 0 XP, and then finally number 12 is going to be how much XP it takes to get to the next level. Easiest way for this is just take the computer's level and times it by 10. You might need to adjust this in your balancing. So that's it. That's got all of our stats copied over. So we've now selected which Pokemon we want. It's copied it over. A couple more things that we need to do. First thing, we're going to add the function view my Pokemon. This just refreshes that pane so we can see all our Pokemon again, and this will update it with the new Pokemon that we've just added to our team. We're then going to go into battle, and we're going to set the dialogue text. So if I just find the set text option, and we're just going to give a bit of feedback going Pokemon captured. And then final thing, we just need to set our health and store our health back. So we're going to go to my Pokemon .set xy. We want to set the value of 1 of our current Pokemon, and the value is going to be player health. So we're just setting our health back, so we've got it. And then finally, we just need to put ourselves back into the world. So for this, we're using the code that we use from running. So first thing we need to do is just add a wait for signal enter. This is something we set up really early on that just waits for the enter key to be pressed. This means we can move on at our own pace. And then system. And then we want to go to layout by name. And then previous layout, which is a variable that we set up to store where we've come from. Just when I thought I'd wrap this video up and did my sort of outro, I noticed another bug. And this is to do with our moves. You can see that we've got this line of code here. So on start of layout, it shows our Pokemon's move. Obviously, if we change Pokemon, we want that to happen as well, and we want to change moves. So what we're going to do is remove this on start of layout, and we're going to add a new function. So I'm going to add a function, and I'm going to call it swap moves. I'm going to add this line of code as a sub-function, just like so. And I'm going to call this twice. So I'm just going to go to the top, and on start of layout, I want to call this function, so swap moves. And I'm also going to do it when I swap Pokemon. So I go down to here, swap Pokemon, and function swap moves. And this just means that when I change Pokemon, the move swap as well. So I've not really noticed, because when I change Pokemon, I've not changed the moves on here. So Razor Leaf and Flamethrower, Razor Leaf and Flamethrower. When I changed to one I captured, moves didn't change. So let's try one more to see the progress of our work today. I'm going to start by getting myself into a battle. And we're going to try and catch this Psyduck. So the Pokemon broke free. And give it another go. I've set to 50-50 odds. I've captured it. I can now pick any slot for it to go in. So I'm going to pick this slot here. You see it's been added. If I get myself into another battle, I'm going to keep the same stats that I had before in terms of HP and XP. I've also got the ability to switch into my Psyduck now. Again, he's at full health because I never attacked him last time. And I've got my moves. Again, we just set the computer moves to all be the same. I've got to attack because I've clicked attack now. We've got no back button set up at the moment. And I can now try and catch this Nidoqueen. One more attempt at this. Oh, I lost. One of the drawbacks you'll notice still is we haven't set up a way for it to change Pokemon if we die. So if any of your Pokemon die, it's game over. Unfortunately, I haven't got a solution for that at the moment. But let's just try and catch another Pokemon. Hopefully we won't die before we get to that stage. One more time. I'll probably edit this bit out or speed it up. And finally, I've got another Pokemon. And what I can actually do is, if I don't want to put it in any of these 3 slots, let's say that these slots are full, I can actually override a Pokemon that I've already got. So this system will keep going no matter how many Pokemon you capture. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video today. This has definitely been one of the longer episodes, a lot of systems that we've had to add in place. If you have enjoyed this video today, please consider giving it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not, and I'll see you in the next video. Today's code will be available on my new website, along with many other tutorials. Check it out in the description below.